The most disturbing aspect of this case isn't just that 42-year-old Peter Fabiano was gunned down at his own front door on Halloween night 1957. It's that his killer used the perfect disguise to blend in with trick-or-treaters, and the murder was orchestrated by the two people Peter trusted most, his wife and her secret lover. What appeared to be a random act of violence on Halloween night was actually a carefully planned execution, with the holiday providing the perfect cover for one of the most cold-blooded murders in Los Angeles history. This is the story of how Halloween became a weapon, and how a love triangle turned deadly in the most calculated way imaginable. Viewer discretion is advised. If you're fascinated by true crime cases involving betrayal and calculated murder, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel with notifications turned on for more shocking investigations like this one. Peter Fabiano seemed to have everything a man could want in 1957 Los Angeles. The 42-year-old was a successful used car salesman who had built a thriving business and provided well for his family. He lived in a comfortable home in the San Fernando Valley with his wife Joan, a beautiful woman 14 years his junior, and appeared to be living the American dream. Peter was known as a hard-working, honest businessman who treated his customers fairly and had earned a solid reputation in the competitive world of used car sales. However, beneath the surface of this seemingly perfect life, dark secrets were brewing that would ultimately lead to Peter's brutal murder. Joan Fabiano, his 28-year-old wife, had grown restless in her marriage and had begun an affair with Goldine Pizer, a 22-year-old aspiring actor and part-time bartender. The affair had been going on for months, and what had started as a simple extramarital relationship had evolved into something far more sinister, a plot to eliminate Peter Fabiano permanently. The relationship between Joan and Goldine had become increasingly intense throughout 1957, with both lovers growing frustrated by the obstacle that Peter represented to their happiness. Joan was unwilling to seek a divorce, which would have left her with limited financial resources, while Goldine was eager to have Joan all to himself without the complications of a husband in the picture. The solution they devised was as cold-blooded as it was calculated. They would have Peter murdered and make it look like a random crime. The planning for Peter's murder began months before Halloween night, with Joan and Goldine carefully considering various scenarios and methods. They needed a plan that would eliminate suspicion from both of them while ensuring that Peter's death appeared to be the result of a random act of violence. Halloween night presented the perfect opportunity, as the streets would be filled with people in costumes and masks, providing ideal cover for a killer to approach the house without being easily identified. Joan and Goldine recruited a third conspirator for their deadly plot, Joan Rebel, a 23-year-old woman who had become friends with Joan and was struggling financially. Rebel was promised money in exchange for her participation in the murder scheme, and she agreed to be the one who would actually pull the trigger. The plan was elegantly simple in its brutality. Rebel would dress as a trick-or-treater, approach the Fabiano house on Halloween night, and shoot Peter when he answered the door. The conspirators spent weeks refining their plan, with Joan providing detailed information about Peter's habits and routines. They knew that Peter typically answered the door when trick-or-treaters came calling, and they planned to take advantage of his generous nature and willingness to participate in the Halloween tradition. The costume would provide perfect camouflage, allowing Rebel to approach the house without arousing suspicion and escape into the crowd of other costumed revelers. On the evening of October 31st, 1957, the deadly plan was set into motion. Joan made sure to establish an alibi by being seen at various locations throughout the evening, while Goldine positioned himself where he could observe the murder but maintain plausible deniability. Rebel donned her Halloween costume, a simple but effective disguise that would allow her to blend in with the legitimate trick-or-treaters who were making their rounds through the neighborhood. As evening fell and the streets filled with costumed children and teenagers, Rebel made her way to the Fabiano house. The neighborhood was alive with Halloween activity, with families decorating their homes and preparing to hand out candy to the steady stream of trick-or-treaters who would be visiting throughout the night. The festive atmosphere provided perfect cover for what was about to unfold, as no one would think twice about seeing another costumed figure approaching a house on Halloween night. At approximately 8:30 p.m., Peter Fabiano heard the familiar sound of the doorbell ringing, followed by the traditional call of trick or treat. He had been expecting trick-or-treaters all evening and had prepared candy to hand out to the neighborhood children. Without any suspicion or concern, Peter approached the front door and opened it, expecting to see costumed children waiting for their Halloween treats. Instead, he found himself face to face with Joan Rebel, who was disguised as a trick-or-treater, but armed with a deadly weapon. The murder was swift and brutal. Rebel fired multiple shots at point-blank range, striking Peter in the chest and killing him almost instantly. The sound of gunshots shattered the peaceful Halloween evening, but in the chaos and confusion that followed, Rebel was able to escape into the crowd of other costumed revelers. Neighbors who heard the shots initially thought they might be Halloween pranks or firecrackers, and by the time they realized something serious had happened, the killer had vanished into the night. The discovery of Peter's body sent shockwaves through the San Fernando Valley community and made national headlines as one of the most shocking crimes of the Halloween season. The idea that someone would use the innocent tradition of trick-or-treating as cover for murder was particularly disturbing to the public, and the case quickly became known as the trick-or-treat murder. Police were initially baffled by the apparent randomness of the crime and struggled to identify any motive for the killing. Joan Fabiano played the role of the grieving widow to perfection, appearing devastated by her husband's death and cooperating fully with the police investigation. She provided investigators with information about Peter's business dealings and suggested that the murder might have been connected to his work in the used car industry, where disputes and conflicts were not uncommon. Her performance was so convincing that she was initially viewed as a victim rather than a suspect. However, the investigation began to uncover inconsistencies in Joan's story and evidence of her extramarital affair with Goldine Pizer. Detectives discovered that Joan had been seen with Goldine on multiple occasions, and that their relationship was far more serious than she had initially admitted. As investigators dug deeper into the couple's background, they began to suspect that Peter's murder was not a random crime but a carefully orchestrated plot. The breakthrough in the case came when police were able to trace the murder weapon and connect it to Joan Rebel. Under intense questioning, Rebel eventually broke down and confessed to the murder, revealing the full extent of the conspiracy involving Joan Fabiano and Goldine Pizer. Her confession provided investigators with the details they needed to understand how the murder had been planned and executed, and it led to the arrest of all three conspirators. The trial of Joan Fabiano, Goldine Pizer, and Joan Rebel became a media sensation, with newspapers across the country covering the shocking details of the Halloween murder plot. The prosecution painted a picture of a cold-blooded conspiracy motivated by greed and lust, while the defense attorneys attempted to minimize their clients' roles in the crime. The evidence against all three defendants was overwhelming, including Rebel's detailed confession and physical evidence linking them to the murder. Joan Rebel, who had actually pulled the trigger, was sentenced to life in prison for first-degree murder. Goldine Pizer, who had helped plan the murder and recruited Rebel, was also sentenced to life in prison. Joan Fabiano, despite her role as the mastermind behind the plot, received a lighter sentence due to her cooperation with authorities and her status as a woman in an era when female defendants often received more lenient treatment. The Peter Fabiano murder case had a lasting impact on how Americans viewed Halloween safety and the potential dangers that could lurk behind innocent traditions. The idea that someone could use the cover of trick-or-treating to commit murder was particularly disturbing to parents and communities across the country, and it contributed to growing concerns about Halloween safety that persist to this day. The case also highlighted the dangers of extramarital affairs and the lengths to which some people will go to eliminate obstacles to their desires. The cold-blooded nature of the plot, with its careful planning and use of Halloween as cover, demonstrated a level of calculation and cruelty that shocked even experienced law enforcement officers and prosecutors. If you found this investigation into a calculated Halloween murder as shocking and disturbing as we did, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel with notifications turned on. We explore the most compelling true crime cases and the dark side of human nature, bringing you stories that reveal how ordinary people can become capable of extraordinary evil. Your support helps us continue investigating these important cases and examining the psychology behind the most shocking crimes in history. Until next time, remember that evil can hide behind the most innocent facades, and sometimes the greatest danger comes from those we trust the most.